The whispers began as soft murmurs, barely perceptible, echoing in the far recesses of my mind. I thought nothing of them at first, dismissing the sounds as my overactive imagination. But over time, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, invading both my waking and sleeping hours. I jolted awake night after night, my heart hammering wildly in my chest, my sheets damp with cold sweat. The whispers had crescendoed into piercing shrieks, clawing relentlessly at the fraying edges of my sanity. I clamped my hands over my ears, trying in vain to block out the bone-chilling sounds, but the voices only grew more furious, howling and screeching inside my head. My parents grew deeply concerned, convinced that I was plummeting into madness. They dragged me from doctor to doctor, subjecting me to endless batteries of tests. Each night, the medications they prescribed failed to silence the tortured voices echoing through my mind. "We are coming for you, Alex." The voices taunted, their sinister whispers slithering through my consciousness. "You cannot hide from us." I recall it well. On Saturday, I began to see shadowy figures stalking the hallways at night, their twisted, elongated forms lurking just outside my bedroom door. I squeezed my eyes shut and pulled the covers over my head, praying desperately for the morning light, but I could feel their sinister presence drawing closer. The darkness thick with their malevolent energy. One night, as I lay huddled beneath my sheets, I heard the door slowly creak open. Heavy, shambling footsteps thudded closer. I recoiled in terror as a clammy, icy hand clamped over my mouth, sharp claws digging into my cheek. I thrashed against my attacker's iron grip, my muffled scream silenced in the darkness. When morning finally came, my sheets were torn to shreds, my arms and legs covered in deep, bloody gashes. But my parents saw nothing amiss in my room, only fearful concern lingering in their eyes. I knew then that I had to find answers before the creeping madness consumed what little grip I still had on reality. My desperate search eventually led me to Gabriel, an occult professor at the local university, who reluctantly agreed to help me, though skepticism still clouded his gaze. We spent countless days and sleepless nights together, poring over his collection of ancient, arcane texts. The curling symbols and spidery text bled together as we desperately sought some clue to the malevolent forces haunting my waking hours. Gabriel delved into obscure rituals and incantations, determined to unlock the secrets that could vanquish the darkness. Just as Gabriel prepared to leave late one evening, the power abruptly cut out, plunging the room into absolute darkness. The temperature plunged rapidly, our breath coming out in thick icy plumes. From the surrounding void, two humanoid figures slowly emerged, their limbs grotesquely elongated, their eyes empty pools of endless black. Gabriel's face went pale, his voice barely a whisper as he uttered two names that struck a chord of primordial terror deep within me. Tartarus and Erebus. This is beyond me. The shadowy creatures moved with an otherworldly quickness, their claws slicing through Gabriel's flesh as if he were made of paper. His agonized screams echoed deafeningly through the cramped study. Rivulets of crimson spattered across the yellowed pages scattered on the floor. The creatures then turned their soulless gaze to me, venom dripping languidly from their grinning maws. I ran blindly through the empty streets, my lungs burning, my limbs leaden and clumsy with terror. But it was no use. The creatures descended from the darkness above, their talons glinting in the dim moonlight as they slowly encircled me. They herded me relentlessly into a dead-end alley, trapping me against brick walls that dripped with dark ichor. This was my end. Just as their gnashing teeth and razor-sharp claws ripped into my flesh, white-hot pains searing through my veins, everything abruptly went black. I jolted awake in my bed, my skin slick with icy sweat, my heart hammering wildly against my ribs. Moonlight filtered weakly through the curtains, casting shifting shadows across my room. Had it all been just a horrific nightmare? A sudden movement in the corner froze my blood. A hulking silhouette peeled itself from the darkness. Clammy fingers clamped over my mouth, muffling my screams. The shadowy creatures loomed over me, dark blood still dripping from their claws, their eyes burning with twisted glee. One of them spoke, its gravelly voice barely human. The nightmare's only just begun. I thrashed and kicked desperately, but their grip was iron strong. They dragged me from my bed, and I felt an intense, bone-deep cold envelop me as we passed through the doorway into somewhere else. My room, my house was gone. There was only an endless, lightless void that seemed to leach all traces of warmth and hope. The creatures called Tartarus and Erebus now towered above me, at least 10 feet tall, their horns scraping the unseen ceiling. In their talons they gripped twisted metal implements glinting with blood. Though I longed for the refuge of unconsciousness, some dark magic kept my mind tortuously alert. They set upon me, carving into my flesh with expert precision to maximize pain. When I could barely summon the energy to scream, they would stop and force a foul potion down my throat. My vitality would be shockingly restored, only to be drained again through endless hours of agonizing torture. How long this continued, I cannot say. Time lost all meaning in that place of despair between worlds. Just when I felt the last flickers of my sanity and humanity slipping away, a faint light appeared in the distance. Gabriel's dirt-streaked face suddenly materialized before me, his eyes brimming with sorrow and rage. His lips moved urgently, but I could not comprehend his words. With great effort, he dragged me away from my tormentors, his fingers smeared with the blood from my countless wounds. The demonic creatures let loose an unearthly roar of outrage as they saw their prize being taken. They moved with blurring speed, their jagged claws slicing toward Gabriel's unprotected back. At the last instant, he held up a strange medallion marked with arcane symbols, and the demons recoiled, howling in pain and fury. Their hate-filled eyes promised unspeakable retribution as Gabriel pulled me into the light, away from that eternal night. I awoke later in a small room heavy with incense and candle smoke. Gabriel sat nearby, his face pale with exhaustion. In whispered tones, he told me how he had immersed himself in the deepest and most dangerous occult magics, sacrificing his soul and sanity to breach the veil and retrieve me. But we were not safe. The nightmare was just beginning. Tartarus and Erebus were ancient ones, elemental beings of chaos and shadow who longed to break through and envelop mankind in their eternal darkness. By taking me, they had splintered the walls between realities. Soon their physical forms would emerge, unleashing unspeakable horror into the world. Gabriel had discovered an incantation to banish the ancient ones, but it would require a sacrifice, someone to take my place as an anchor to their unholy realm. We argued fiercely about who would make that sacrifice, neither wanting to condemn the other. As we veered closer to that fated decision, oily black smoke began to seep through the walls, accompanied by the now familiar sadistic whispers. There was no more time. With tears burning in his eyes, Gabriel knocked me unconscious and dragged me to the edge of the occult circle he had drawn on the floor. Candles and fetishes marked the perimeter, barely keeping the swelling darkness at bay. Gabriel knelt in the center of the circle and began chanting the arcane words he had so painstakingly translated. The walls trembled, cracks spreading outward from the center like jagged spider webs. The air filled with the Ancient One's enraged roars. Through the haze of magical energy, I saw Gabriel turn to look at me one last time, a sad smile on his face. He whispered something I couldn't make out. Then he sliced his palm with a blackened dagger and smashed his bloodied fist onto the ground at the circle's center. Blinding light erupted outward, accompanied by an unearthly howl from the invading darkness. My body slid backwards through the doorway as primal energy filled the room, scouring it bare. From the outside I watched in muted horror as flashes of light and darkness warred inside, briefly illuminating Gabriel's slumped silhouette. With a final concussive blast, the door slammed shut, sealing seamlessly into solid wall. Smoke drifted from the cracks between the boards. It was over. The house was deathly silent, no trace remaining of the ritual or the gaping passageway to those nightmare realms. I knelt alone in the abandoned, dust-covered study. Gabriel was gone, having sacrificed everything to stop the Ancient Ones. The room still echoed with their malevolent whispers, reverberations from a battle beyond the limits of our world. I knew this lull was only temporary. An incessant screeching sound filled my head, piercing my soul like a butcher slicing frozen meat. It was an alarm clock. I was in my bed. It read Saturday. All of this will happen today.